Hey there, beautiful people. Welcome back to Mind-Blowing Stories. I'm your host, Mike Thompson, coming to you live from my cozy little apartment here in the heart of Phoenix, Arizona, where the desert sun sets in a blaze of orange and pink. If you're new to the channel, welcome to the family. This is the place where I share tales that'll leave you speechless, stories that twist and turn like a desert road. And today's is one that still haunts me. Before we dive in, I've got to get something off my chest. 96% of you amazing folks watching aren't subscribed. Can you believe it? Only 4 out of every 100 viewers have hit that subscribe button. It's free, takes 2 seconds, and it keeps this old storyteller going. So please, hit that red subscribe button down there and ring the notification bell. It means the world to me. If you're a regular, you know this channel is packed with hundreds of stories, mysteries, adventures, romances, and everything in between. But today's tale, it's personal, deeply personal. It's a story of love, betrayal, and a twist that hit me like a sandstorm in the face. So grab your coffee, maybe a blanket, and settle in as I take you back to 1982. To the woman who turned my world upside down, Margaret O'Sullivan. Don't forget to smash that like button and drop a comment with your thoughts. Your words light up my day, and I read every single one. All right, let's get to it. It was the fall of 1982, and I was 37, a mechanical engineer at Honeywell, right here in Phoenix. The days were long, filled with blueprints and machinery, the hum of air conditioners and the clatter of tools. I'd been divorced for 3 years. My ex-wife Linda used to say I loved machines more than her. Maybe there was a grain of truth there. But that's a story for another time. After work, I'd escape to the Phoenix Public Library downtown, not because I was some bookworm chasing high literature, but because it was quiet, a sanctuary from the noise of the world. They had a stellar engineering section shelves, stacked with journals on HVAC systems, thermodynamics, the kind of stuff that got my gears turning. I'd sit there, surrounded by the smell of old books and the soft rustle of pages, losing myself in technical diagrams. It wasn't glamorous, but it was my world, and I was content. One Tuesday evening, around 6:30, as the library's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, I saw her. Margaret O'Sullivan. She was behind the circulation desk, and folks, let me tell you, she was a vision. Auburn hair that caught the light like a sunset over the Grand Canyon, green eyes that sparkled like desert springs, and a smile that could power the whole city grid. I'm not exaggerating. She was absolutely stunning. But me? I was shy, always had been. The kind of guy who'd rather tinker with a broken engine than talk to a beautiful woman. So for 3 weeks, I'd go to that library, check out my engineering books, steal glances at her, and slip out, my heart pounding like a piston. A grown man acting like a teenager with his first crush pathetic, right? I'd watch her from the corner of my eye, stamping books, chatting with patrons, her laughter like a melody I couldn't get out of my head. I'd rehearse things to say in my mind, clever lines, maybe a joke, but when I get to the desk, all I'd manage was a mumbled thanks as I grabbed my books and bolted. Then one evening, everything changed. I was reaching for a book on the top shelf. Advanced Thermodynamics in Industrial Applications. A real page-turner when the whole shelf wobbled. Books came crashing down, heavy tomes on fluid dynamics and heat transfer, and I landed flat on my back, sprawled out like a fool on the library floor. The thud echoed, and I could feel every eye in the place on me. And who comes rushing over? Margaret? "Oh my goodness, are you all right?" she said, her voice like honey with a faint Boston accent, smooth and warm. She knelt beside me, those green eyes filled with concern, her auburn hair falling just so. I could smell her perfume, something soft like jasmine. Yeah, I'm fine," I mumbled, my face burning as I tried to gather what was left of my dignity, along with the scattered books. Just gravity doing its thing. She laughed, not at me, but with me, a sound that made my embarrassment almost worth it. She started helping me stack the books, her hands quick and gentle, and that's when I noticed her wedding ring. A big diamond, sparkling under the lights, the kind that probably cost more than my beat-up Chevy. "You're here a lot," she said as we worked, her tone light but curious. "I'm Margaret, by the way." Mike Thompson," I replied, still sitting on the floor like an idiot, my tie askew. "And yeah, I work nearby. Engineering stuff, you know." "Well, Mike Thompson, who works nearby with engineering stuff," she said, with that $1,000,000 smile. "Maybe next time you need a book from the top shelf, you should ask for help, instead of attempting amateur mountaineering." I laughed, a real laugh, and for the first time, I felt like I wasn't just a guy in her library. From that moment, we talked every time I came in. Little conversations at first about the books I was reading, the dry Phoenix heat, the way the city seemed to sprawl endlessly into the desert. She told me she'd moved here from Boston 5 years earlier with her husband, Richard, a real estate developer who'd made a fortune building strip malls and apartment complexes across the valley. She'd talk about her old life in Boston, the way the snow would blanket the streets, the smell of the harbor, the bustle of the city. I'd share stories of my time in the Navy, the endless blue of the ocean, the way the ship's engines hummed like a heartbeat. It was easy, natural, like we'd known each other forever. But here's what I noticed, and this is important for what comes later. Whenever she mentioned Richard, her whole demeanor shifted. The light in her green eyes would dim, just for a moment, like a cloud passing over the sun. Her smile would falter, her shoulders tense. It was subtle, but I caught it, and it stuck with me. I started to wonder what kind of man Richard was, what kind of life she was living behind that sparkling ring. After about a month of these chats, my heart racing every time I walked into the library, I finally worked up the courage to ask her out for coffee. I stood at the circulation desk, my palms sweaty, my mouth dry, expecting her to laugh or point to that ring. Instead, she looked around the library, bit her lower lip and said, "You know what? I'd like that. But it would have to be somewhere discreet." Red flag, right? A married woman wanting to meet in secret. I should have walked away, thanked her for the chats, and gone back to my books. But folks, when you're falling for someone the way I was falling for Margaret, common sense gets lost in the desert wind. We met the next Saturday at a little cafe called Desert Blooms, tucked away on the east side of Phoenix, far from prying eyes. The place was a hole in the wall, with mismatched chairs and a jukebox that played old country tunes. I got there early, nursing my second cup of coffee, the bitter taste grounding me as I watched the door. When Margaret walked in, wearing a simple blue dress and sunglasses despite being indoors, my heart skipped a beat. "Sorry I'm late," she said, sliding into the booth across from me, her voice soft but tense. "I had to." "Well, it doesn't matter." That first coffee date lasted 4 hours. 4 hours. We talked about everything. Her childhood in Boston, where she'd climb trees in the common and dream of being a teacher. My time in the Navy, stationed on a destroyer, staring at the stars on quiet nights. The books we loved, the movies that made us cry, the dreams we'd tucked away as life got in the way. She told me she'd wanted to teach history, to inspire kids with stories of the past, but ended up working part-time at the library because Richard didn't want her to have a real career. He needed her available for his business dinners, his social events, his world. "Sounds lonely," I said, watching her stir her coffee. "It is," she replied, pulling off her sunglasses. Her eyes were sad, like a desert sky before a storm. Very lonely. That's when she told me the truth about her marriage. Richard was 20 years older, controlling and emotionally distant. They'd met when she was 23, fresh out of college, working as a secretary in his Boston office. He'd swept her off her feet with expensive dinners, weekend trips to Martha's Vineyard, promises of a life she'd never imagined. But after they married and moved to Phoenix, the fairy tale faded. "He provides for me," she said, staring into her coffee cup, her fingers tracing the rim. "A beautiful house in Scottsdale, a nice car, all the clothes and jewelry a woman could want. But Mike, I feel like I'm living in a beautiful prison." I reached across the table and took her hand, her skin warm against mine. She didn't pull away, and in that moment, something shifted. It wasn't just a crush anymore. It was something deeper, something dangerous. From that day, we started meeting regularly, always in secret, always careful. A diner in Tempe, a park bench in Glendale, a quiet bar on the edge of town where the lights were dim and the patrons kept to themselves. It sounds terrible, I know. An affair, a married woman, a man who should have known better. But you have to understand, I was head over heels in love. Margaret made me feel alive, like the world had color again after years of gray. We'd steal kisses in empty parking lots, our hands brushing as we passed coffee cups, our conversations stretching late into the night. She'd talk about leaving Richard, about starting over, about a life where we could walk hand in hand in public. No secrets, no fear. "I just need to find the right time," she'd say, her voice soft but determined. The right way to do it. I believed her, or maybe I just wanted to. For 6 months, we lived in this fragile bubble, stealing moments, building dreams on shaky ground. Then everything went to hell. It was a Wednesday in April 1983, and I was at work, hunched over a blueprint when my phone rang. It was Margaret, something she never did. Too risky. She was sobbing, her words barely coherent. "Mike, something terrible has happened. Richard is missing." My stomach dropped. She explained that he'd left for a business meeting in Las Vegas 3 days earlier and never came back. His hotel room was untouched, his belongings still there, but his rental car was found abandoned in the desert 50 miles outside Vegas. No signs of foul play, no ransom note, nothing. He'd vanished. The news was everywhere. Phoenix developer disappears in Nevada desert. Headlines screamed suspicion, and guess who the prime suspect was? Margaret, the young, beautiful wife who stood to inherit a fortune. She called me that night, her voice shaking. "They think I did something to him, Mike. They keep asking about our marriage, about whether I was having an affair. What am I going to do?" I should have told her to get a lawyer, to tell the truth, to let the system sort it out. I should have stayed out of it. But love makes you reckless. "Pack a bag," I told her. "I'm coming to get you." Oh, I picked her up at 2 in the morning from a gas station a mile from her house, the neon sign flickering in the dark. She stood there with one suitcase, her face pale, her body trembling like a leaf in the wind. We drove straight through to my cousin Danny's cabin in Flagstaff, the road stretching out under the stars, neither of us speaking much. Those 2 weeks in Flagstaff were surreal, folks. On one hand, I was finally alone with the woman I loved. No more sneaking. No more stolen moments. We'd wake to the scent of pine trees, the air crisp and cool, so different from Phoenix's relentless heat. We'd make breakfast together, eggs sizzling in a pan, coffee brewing as the sun peeked through the forest. We'd take long walks, her hand in mine, the crunch of leaves under our feet, talking about a future we could barely imagine. But on the other hand, we were fugitives, hiding from the world. Margaret was convinced the police would arrest her any day, and I was starting to wonder if I'd thrown away my career, my reputation, for a woman who might have done something unthinkable. The newspapers were relentless, speculating about her motives, her marriage, her life. Every knock on the door made us jump, every passing car a potential threat. Yet, even with that shadow hanging over us, those days were some of the happiest of my life. We'd sit by the fire at night, wrapped in a blanket, planning a life in California, maybe a little house by the ocean, the sound of waves lulling us to sleep. Then one morning Danny called, his voice urgent. "Mike, turn on the TV. Channel 12. Right now." We scrambled to find the remote, and there it was, a breaking news report that hit us like a bolt of lightning. Richard O'Sullivan was alive. Not only alive, but in federal custody in Miami, Florida, arrested on charges of money laundering and fraud. The whole disappearance was a sham. Richard had been skimming money from his construction projects for years, funneling it through offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. But he'd gotten greedy, laundering money for some dangerous people folks who don't take kindly to being cheated. When he realized the feds were closing in and his business partners were getting suspicious, he staged his disappearance, planning to lay low, then resurface with a new identity and millions in stolen cash. But here's the kicker. He was caught because he couldn't resist his old habits. Using a fake passport, he'd been hitting high-end strip clubs in Miami, charging thousands to credit cards linked to his shell companies. The FBI tracked him down in no time. What an idiot, right? Margaret and I sat on that old couch in Danny's cabin, holding each other, tears streaming down our faces. She wasn't a murderer. I wasn't harboring a fugitive. We were free. Or so we thought. The legal fallout dragged on for months. Richard's assets were frozen house, cars, jewelry. Everything Margaret had was tangled up in the investigation, deemed potentially bought with dirty money. She didn't care. "I'm finally free, Mike," she'd say, her eyes bright with a hope I hadn't seen before. For the first time in years, I'm truly free. We moved into a small apartment in Tempe, a place with creaky floors and a leaky faucet. But it was ours. Margaret got a full-time job at the Arizona State University Library, her love for books finally finding a purpose. I went back to my engineering work, the hum of machinery a familiar comfort. It wasn't glamorous, but we were happy really, genuinely happy. We'd cook dinner together, simple meals like spaghetti or chili, laughing over shared stories. We'd walk to the local market, her arm looped through mine, the desert sunset painting the sky. We talked about marriage once her divorce was finalized, picturing a small ceremony in Sedona. Just us and a few close friends, the red rocks glowing around us. I'd sneak glances at rings in jewelry store windows, imagining one on her finger. Then, in the spring of 1985, everything changed again. Margaret started getting tired. Not just tired, but bone-deep exhausted. We thought it was the stress of the past 2 years, the investigation, the media, the upheaval. But when she started losing weight, her clothes hanging loose, and struggled to catch her breath after a short walk, I knew something was wrong. I insisted she see a doctor, my heart pounding as we sat in the waiting room, her hand squeezing mine. The diagnosis hit us like a freight train. Lung cancer, stage 4. The doctor's words were cold, clinical, 6 months, maybe a year if we were lucky. But I've never smoked a day in my life, Margaret kept saying, her voice breaking. How is this possible? The doctor shook his head, his face grim. Sometimes life just isn't fair, he said. We tried everything. Chemotherapy, radiation, experimental treatments. I spent every penny I had, took out loans, sold my car. Margaret was a fighter, never complaining, never asking, why me? She'd smile through the pain, saying we needed to make the most of our time. We'd sit on our tiny balcony, watching the stars, talking about the little things, the way she loved the smell of rain in the desert, the way I'd hum old Navy tunes when I thought no one was listening. We got married in the end, a simple ceremony at the courthouse. Danny and his wife were our witnesses, and Margaret wore a white dress from JCPenney, her auburn hair pulled back, her green eyes shining despite the shadows under them. She was the most beautiful bride I'd ever seen. She made it 11 months after the diagnosis, 11 months of hospital stays, needles and machines that beeped endlessly. We'd lie in her hospital bed, her frail hand in mine, talking about the life we'd planned, the dreams we'd never live. She died on a Tuesday morning in February 1986, holding my hand, whispering that she loved me. I was 41, and it felt like my life was over. The years that followed were a blur. I went through the motions work, sleep, repeat. I moved back to Phoenix, got a bigger apartment, tried dating a few women. But nothing felt real. It was like living in a world drained of color, a monochrome existence after years of vibrant hues. Margaret's absence was a weight I carried everywhere, in every quiet moment, every empty evening. I'd walk past the library, half expecting to see her behind the desk, that smile lighting up the room. About 10 years ago, I stumbled into YouTube, started making videos about my engineering project's dry stuff, like how to optimize an HVAC system. But then I started telling stories, and something clicked. I found I had a knack for it, and more importantly, it helped me process the grief I'd buried for decades. Sharing these tales, letting them breathe, gave me a way to keep Margaret's memory alive, to make sense of the love and loss that shaped me. And that's the story of Margaret O'Sullivan, the love of my life, the woman who turned my world upside down, and the reason I still believe in love, even when it breaks your heart. But wait, there's one more twist, a final piece that still keeps me up at night. About 5 years ago, I got a letter, no return address, postmarked from somewhere in Oregon. Inside was a single photograph, Margaret and me, sitting at that cafe in 1982, laughing over coffee, oblivious to the world. On the back, in neat handwriting, were the words, "Some stories are worth keeping alive." I never found out who sent it, but it shook me to my core. How many people knew about us? Who was watching us back then, in those stolen moments? And more importantly, all those details I'd shared with Margaret about Richard, his business, his habits, his weaknesses, had she passed them along to someone else? I'm not saying she set him up, that she was part of his schemes, but the timing, his disappearance, our affair, the way it all fell into place, it feels too perfect, too convenient to be pure chance. That photograph? She'd been holding it the day she died, her fingers tracing our faces as she smiled. I thought the nurses had cleared out her things, but someone kept it, held onto it for 30 years before sending it to me. So here's my question for you, beautiful viewers. Was I the love of Margaret's life, or just a pawn in a game I never understood? Was our romance real, or part of some elaborate con, a web spun tighter than I could have imagined? I've spent 5 years chasing answers, digging through memories, replaying every conversation we had. I'm no closer to the truth now than I was when that letter arrived. But maybe that's okay. Maybe some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. Maybe the real story isn't about whether Margaret was innocent or guilty, whether our love was true or a lie. Maybe it's about how love, even messy, complicated, potentially deceptive love, can change you in ways you never expected. Those 11 months we had after her diagnosis, when the world narrowed to hospital rooms and quiet moments, were the most honest of my life. Cancer strips away all pretense, all games. In the end, we were just two people who loved each other fiercely, clinging to every second we had left. And that part, I know that part was real. So there you have it, folks. Episode 247 of Mind-Blowing Stories, the most personal tale I've ever shared. If you felt something, please hit that thumbs up. It tells me these stories are hitting home. And for the love of all that's holy, hit that subscribe button. 96% of you are watching without subscribing, and every time you do, a piece of this old storyteller's heart breaks. It's free, takes 2 seconds, and keeps these tales coming week after week. Drop a comment and tell me what you think about Margaret's story. Was she innocent? Was our love real? Or is there more to this than I'll ever know? I read every comment, and your thoughts always give me something new to ponder. Next week, I'll tell you about the time I accidentally got caught up in a bank robbery in Tucson, just trying to make a deposit, and ended up a key witness in a federal case. It's another story so wild, it has to be true. Until then, keep living those mind-blowing lives. And remember, everyone has a story worth telling. You just need the courage to tell it. This is Mike Thompson, signing off from Phoenix, Arizona. Thanks for listening, beautiful people. See you next week.